Hi, May Kay here again with the next episode of A Stitch in Time. In this episode, we head to South Hill in Limerick, an area experiencing serious social and economic challenges. To learn more about that, we go to the South Hill Hub, which is a youth centre right in the middle of South Hill. It's been operating in the community for 13 years, helping young people overcome their challenges. Now, on the week of filming, I managed to break my ankle, but the show must go on, so the crew went and investigated. And the first person they met was Susie, and the first question asked, what hit young people the hardest?
The way I see it is, do you know, when you're a teenager and everything in your life is about your friends, do you nearly eat, sleep and breathe thinking about your friends and the fun you're going to have and what you're going to do, and, you know, all that was taken away from them. Their relationships, their friendships. There was no social outlets, there was no spaces for them to be, you know, to have fun or to be young and to be themselves.
So Susie is describing a space where young people can be just that, young people. And we wanted to know what happens when that space is taken away.
Physically, the doors had to shut because COVID was new and no one really knew how to, you know, stay safe. But straight away, we kind of just linked in with families and asked them what kind of supports they needed. We help with food parcels. When you know there's a need in the community and you're trying to respond to it, that's part of our natural role. But when the needs are continuing to, I suppose, become more and more apparent, the mental health issues like that, the lack of education, the lack of relationships or friendships. It's
really hard to believe we're talking about food parcels in Ireland. It's very hard to get our heads around that when we apparently have one of the fastest growing economies in the EU. And Susie mentioned education, and we will talk to some young people later in the episode about that, but we had one more question for her about the long-term effects of all of this.
I mean, the trauma that you experience at any time in life kind of, I suppose, stays with you and will always come out in some way, shape or form as an adult. We won't see it in 2 or 3 months' time, we might see it in 3 or 4 years' time, or for the 10 and 12-year-olds, it might be in 10 years' time that you'll see it. You know, I suppose that'll have a long-term impact when you think of employment and I suppose what their overall outcomes in life will be. I do genuinely feel like that's riding the tip of a tidal wave and we're waiting for it to crash because they've been denied the space to really just be themselves and be young. And we get young people knocking on the door all day long, needing support around 101 different things. And I suppose once we're there and we're able to answer the door, that's probably the most important thing.
So Susie spoke just there about space and the importance of creating safe space for young people. And if you needed more proof about that, I think this next clip really sums it up. These 3 young girls would speak, but only if they could remain anonymous. And I think it's pretty clear that that gave them license to speak really honestly and openly about their experience.
Transition year, 4th year.
I'm going to transition year as well.
I'm repeating 3rd. Have my friends anyway turned into winos? Can I say that?
Like, people thought there was nothing else to do, like, than just go drinking and smoking and stuff.
14, 15.
Younger?
Like, sometimes you could be up here for an hour and a half, maybe longer. And that's an hour and a half of things we should be doing and not things we shouldn't be doing. And then if we come up here, like, we're all together. It gets us off the roads.
So a few minutes ago, Susie mentioned food parcels, and now the girls are saying that the youth centres have kept them off the roads. You really do end up just going, what the hell is going on? I want to give a bit of context to this next clip. So the girls mentioned a youth worker named Leah, who we'll meet later on in the episode. But first of all, let's hear just how important Leah is to them.
Like a while ago, I was in the hall and I told Leah something that my friends don't even know. If I have a falling out with someone, they'll tell me, like, instead of trying to fight them, they'll give me a better way to, like, deal with it.
We can tell them stuff like they won't go home and tell our parents, like.
So if youth centres are a safe space, and it's very clear how important that is to them, we wanted to ask them about their other safe space, school.
When we went back to school, no one was interested in learning. Because when we were at home doing online learning, no one was paying attention. And then when you had to go back to school and actually had to sit there in front of the teacher, it was hard. Because when you were at home, the teacher couldn't watch it. They didn't know what we were doing. We just had to pretend we were listening. But when you're there and actually have to do work, and you haven't done it in so long.
We have younger brothers and sisters, and they're running around the house, and they expect us to find somewhere quiet.
I hate school. I only like going to school for the laugh, and like in COVID you can't really do that because you can't do nothing. We couldn't do PE. Like we can't socialise. Usually we could go to discos or and you have the social distance, you'll probably be dancing in a box. Sure, by the time this is all gone, we'll be too old for discos. We'll be in the nightclub.
So in this series, we've been to Dublin, Waterford, and now Limerick, and we are seeing the same thing over and over again. Just the past 18 months has been a disaster for young people when it comes to school, and it's such a pity. It's such a pivotal part in their lives.
In school, we get asked a lot what we want to do. I want to be a carer for elder people.
I want to help people's families and stuff, but like I don't want to break up families. I want to help families like a social worker kind of.
I thought you couldn't ask us harder questions. How did COVID make you feel? I don't know. No, don't even ask me that. I'll take a pass to that question, thank you.
Next up we meet Cian, a very driven and determined young man. He loves boxing and it's his safe space, but when the conversation turned towards school, unsurprisingly at this stage we hear the same frustrations. And yet again, it's the youth centres that step in to help him on the next step in his life.
When school went online, I wasn't interested at all, and it just wasn't for me, and I didn't check in at all. We could stay up all night, and everything was just, there was no routine, but you need a routine in life, other than that you're all over the place. It's not just a centre, when you're here, if you have anything on your mind, you can just talk about it, ask questions, because if you bottle it in too much, it's not healthy at all. They understand what we want to do and what's best for us as well. So what makes us happy, they're brilliant for advice on that, on how to get there and what it takes to get there. They even got me a job, so they were very, very helpful towards that.
The last person I want to introduce you to is Leah. The girls mentioned her earlier on as someone they could really confide in. That level of trust is huge, and it's really clear that Leah knows what's going on in these young people's lives and knows what needs to be done.
There was nowhere for them really to go. They couldn't go to the cinema, they couldn't go to town and go for food, or, all of those things were immediately taken away. So the only space that they had was the road, and which would be all around here. It's just becomes a thing where they have nothing else to do, so they're doing the things that they probably shouldn't be doing. Now, in regards to education, that's a bit of a different story, because a lot of young people have decided that they're not going back, and then kind of the older groups then have spoke about dropping out of Leaving Cert, which I suppose we're trying to support them in the sense that, look, you've come so far, you've done your 5 years, finish off the last year, but it's very strange when they don't know what that routine is like or what the education system is like beyond a screen anymore, because that had been their life for so long.
The conversations from today are scary. Susie's talking about the effects manifesting in 10 years, and Leah's highlighting the immediate impact, like those young people who've given up on school. I had no idea before this series of the importance of Leah and Susie and Declan from Waterford and Greek Street Declan. But one thing I know now for sure is they're the ones that know the needs and solutions in their own communities. The Irish Youth Foundation know who these youth workers are, and that's why they need your support in rebuilding a generation of young people.